Have you ever wondered why people willingly support leaders, even when they are fully aware of their corruption? How is it that the same individuals who demand justice begin to exalt someone who openly breaks the rules? This is not merely a political phenomenon. It is a psychological alarm signal that speaks more about us than about those we choose. Let us recall the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, who was accused of embezzling $4.5 billion from a government fund. Despite the abundance of evidence, his supporters defended him as a patriot who prioritized the country's development over Western standards of accountability. Millions of people took to the streets, chanting the name of Mussolini when he abandoned democratic principles and concentrated power in his hands. We have observed this phenomenon across different continents and throughout various eras. Leaders who do not hide their corruption, but rather display it, become objects of admiration for this very reason. This is not just a story. Researchers from Harvard and the University of Chicago studied voter behavior in regions where politicians with criminal backgrounds regularly win elections, and they made a startling discovery. 40% of voters consciously supported corrupt candidates, justifying their choice by claiming that sometimes you need someone willing to break the rules to achieve results when others cannot. Today, we explore Nietzsche's provocative ideas about this psychological phenomenon, and this is not merely a political analysis. These same mechanisms explain everything from toxic relationships to cults of personality, from our obsession with celebrities to why business magnates often evade accountability for their actions. Have you ever found yourself admiring someone, knowing that they have crossed ethical boundaries? Or have you wondered why society repeatedly elevates leaders with obvious character flaws? By the end of this video, you will be able to recognize these patterns in your own decisions and understand what Nietzsche knew about human nature that many of us are still not ready to acknowledge. Imagine standing on the edge of a chasm. Below lies the unknown, chaos, unpredictability, and potential threat. According to Nietzsche, this is not just a physical situation, it is a fundamental condition of humanity. We exist in a universe devoid of inherent meaning or structure, facing uncertainty at every turn. How do we respond? Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, not merely as dominance over others, but as mastery over existence itself. My idea is that every individual body strives to become the master of all space and to expand its power, its will to power, he wrote. This is not abstract philosophy, it is practical psychology. People do not primarily seek happiness or pleasure. We crave control. We desperately want to feel that we understand our world and can navigate it effectively. When personal control seems impossible, whether during economic instability, social upheaval, or personal failures, we become vulnerable to those who offer us a share in their apparent strength. Look at modern political rallies, where thousands of people chant the name of a leader, despite his moral transgressions. These individuals are not ignorant. They find in this an association with power, which seems capable of managing chaos. Social psychologist Jennifer Whitson discovered something curious about this dynamic. A study conducted in 2008 found that participants who felt a lack of control were 40% more likely to see illusory patterns and support conspiracy theories. They also gravitate toward leaders who demonstrate absolute confidence, even if it requires a compromise with morality. When was the last time you admired someone's results, knowing that their methods of achievement did not sit well with you? This contradiction speaks volumes about our relationship with power. In times of uncertainty, our standards may shift unnoticed by ourselves. What is good? Anything that enhances the sense of power, the desire for it, the very strength within a person. This provocative assertion from Nietzsche's Antichrist introduces his controversial theory of moral psychology. Nietzsche identifies two competing moral systems that have existed throughout human history. The master morality values strength, achievement, dominance, and superiority. It defines good as anything that demonstrates power, and evil as anything that shows weakness. The slave morality, according to Nietzsche, arose among the oppressed and highly values humility, empathy, equality, and compassion. It labels the strong as evil and the humble as good. Modern democratic societies officially endorse the slave morality. We publicly extol equality, compassion, and justice. But beneath this apparent consensus lies a curious tension. Many secretly admire overt displays of power. They condemn exploitation from Monday to Friday, yet on weekends, they eagerly watch series about ruthless corporate intrigues. This is not merely hypocrisy. It reveals a deeper psychological reality that influences our attitude toward leadership. Napoleon Bonaparte, although responsible for conquests that claimed millions of lives, inspired loyalty despite his conquests, and because of them. His admirers did not claim he was a good man, despite his flaws. They asserted that he was a man of destiny, who transcended ordinary morality. A study published in 2019 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology confirmed this contradiction. Researchers found that participants who claimed to value equality still rated dominant and power-hungry individuals as more charismatic and effective leaders. We tell sociologists that we want ethical leaders, but our behavior often rewards displays of dominance. Consider how you react when someone successfully breaks the rules that restrict everyone else. You may feel indignation or a slight admiration. When supporters defend the actions of a corrupt leader by saying that he is strong, it is not a mistake. They express the value and morals of the lords, acting under their conscious principles of equality. Perhaps the most striking concept proposed by Nietzsche, which is relevant to today's political climate, lies in the notion of ressentiment. This French term describes not just resentment, but a deeply entrenched psychological state born from a sense of helplessness, suppressed desires for a place, and redirected anger. A person would rather prefer nothing than to wish for nothing at all, Nietzsche wrote. Simply put, people are more likely to choose destructive actions than to feel completely powerless in the face of the world around them. This explains why sometimes people support leaders who destroy institutions instead of feeling utterly helpless. Imagine a community devastated by the closure of factories and economic decline. For years, residents have watched their town deteriorate, feeling ignored by the main institutions. Then a charismatic leader emerges, someone who does what no one else has done, acknowledges their suffering, and promises vengeance against the guilty. Even if this leader is himself involved in corruption, he often receives fervent support. Why? Because the fight against corruption takes a back seat to the psychological relief that comes from having their pain recognized and avenged. When people feel that their values are undermined, their economic security is threatened, or their status is diminished, they want not only a solution, but also retribution. Political scientist Catherine Kramer, in her field research in Wisconsin, identified precisely this dynamic. Rural residents supported policies that sometimes contradicted their economic interests because these policies punished the urban elite, whom they blamed for their marginalization. The emotional satisfaction from the suffering of perceived enemies outweighed material considerations. This helps explain why struggling communities sometimes support leaders who objectively harm their material interests. These communities are not mistaken in their calculations. They choose emotional retribution over practical benefit. Have you ever supported someone not because he helped you, but because he harmed those whom you felt had wronged you? This impulse is inherent in all of us to varying degrees and becomes especially dangerous when exploited by corrupt leaders. Freedom is the will to take responsibility for oneself, Nietzsche wrote. This simple statement carries profound meaning. True freedom entails the heavy burden of responsibility. When we make our own moral decisions, we can no longer blame others for the consequences. In the work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes three spiritual transformations that can occur within a person. First, a camel appears, obediently bearing the burden imposed by others. Then comes a lion, struggling for freedom from that burden. But only the third stage, the child, can create new values and meanings. Most people, as Nietzsche noted, remain camels throughout their lives, preferring the weight of external authority to the horror of freedom, which demands the creation of their own meaning. Psychologist Erich Fromm developed this idea in his book Escape from Freedom, arguing that the anxiety associated with moral responsibility drives people toward authoritarian systems that free them from the burden of decision-making. Imagine a complex and tedious dilemma where there is no clear right answer. What seems more comfortable? To make the decision yourself and bear all the responsibility for the consequences, or to let a strong leader simply tell you what to do? For most of us, the second option brings immense relief. This psychological mechanism explains why, in difficult and uncertain times, corrupt but decisive leaders often gain support. When a charismatic figure confidently declares, "Only I can fix this," or "The solution is simple," they offer relief from the existential burden of searching for answers on one's own. During the chaotic period in Weimar Germany, many citizens welcomed leadership that provided clear narratives and solutions, despite growing evidence of corruption. The psychological relief from not having to navigate moral complexity on their own outweighed concerns about honesty. Ask yourself, when was the last time you shifted a complex moral choice onto an authoritative figure? The relief you experienced is directly related to why society sometimes supports corrupt but decisive leaders. The most reliable way to corrupt youth is to teach them to respect those who think alike more than those who think differently. This observation from Nietzsche's work, The Dawn, highlights a fundamental aspect of human psychology: our deep social nature. Humans evolved as tribal beings. Our ancestors survived not through individual strength, but through group cohesion. This legacy makes us instinctively yearn for security and collective identity and consensus, what Nietzsche called the herd instinct. This instinct serves many positive functions. It fosters cooperation, builds society, and creates common understanding. But it becomes dangerous when a corrupt leader successfully positions themselves as the voice or protector of the group. In such cases, our instinct for conformity can outweigh our individual moral judgment. The psychological cost of standing out from one's social group often seems higher than the cost of compromising one's ethics. We see this dynamic, for example, in how society perceives whistleblowers, even when they expose clear violations. Recall the Enron scandal. When Sharon Watkins warned Chief Executive Officer Kenneth Lay about accounting violations, she was ignored and threatened regarding her career, despite being right. Our social programming is so deep that we often punish those who challenge group unity, even when they are objectively correct. The power of this herd instinct is amplified when corrupt leaders deliberately stoke tribal identity. By framing criticism as an attack on the group, they shift responsibility into betrayal. The social costs of deviating from the group become so high that many are willing to defend increasingly corrupt behavior just to avoid exclusion. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has observed this in his research. When sacred values are threatened, we become intuitive theologians rather than scientists, defending our group's beliefs regardless of the facts. Consider where in your life you feel compelled to support something you actually doubt, just to maintain your belonging to the group. This tension between our social nature and personal moral beliefs shapes our attitudes toward all kinds of leadership. God is dead, proclaimed the madman Nietzsche in his Joyful Science. With this famous statement, he was not merely expressing religious skepticism, but declaring a profound psychological crisis. Who or what now provides meaning and moral guidance? Despite the decline of traditional religion in many societies, Nietzsche noted that our psychological need for an object of worship remains unchanged. The warning of the philosopher is still relevant today. Beware lest the statue crush you. We see this yearning for worship in how we speak about certain leaders and innovators in our culture. She plays four-dimensional chess. He sees around the corner. They are 10 steps ahead of everyone else. This is not a description of capable individuals, but modern myth-making. A corrupt leader who understands this psychology does not merely demonstrate competence. He creates an aura of exclusivity and destiny. His corruption becomes not a defect of character, but a testament to his extraordinary nature. Ordinary rules do not apply to great people. History is made by those willing to break conventions. Take, for example, Vladimir Putin. Despite numerous reports of corruption and vast personal wealth, many of his supporters view this as a sign of strength and a necessity for the revival of Russia. His lavish lifestyle is not seen as mere greed, but as a symbol of national pride. By linking personal power with patriotic narratives, Putin transforms what could be condemned into something that some Russians defend as part of their national identity. The creation of a cult of personality is not merely vanity, it is strategic psychology. When we elevate leaders to the status of heroes or even demigods, we become invested in protecting their mythical image instead of evaluating their real behavior. Psychologist Dan McAdams discovered something remarkable in his research. Supporters of controversial leaders often integrate their personal identity with narratives about the leader's greatness. Rejecting the leader would require reconstructing their own identity, making criticism feel like a betrayal of themselves. Do you have heroes whose shortcomings you are inclined to defend or minimize? Our need for idealized figures is a deeply human feeling, but it is also a vulnerability that corrupt leaders readily exploit. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche presents two opposing types of human archetypes that reveal our relationship with leadership. These are the Übermensch, or Superman, and the Last Man. The Übermensch is Nietzsche's ideal, a person who creates their own values, embraces life's challenges, and takes full responsibility for their decisions. The Last Man, in contrast, seeks only comfort, security, and avoidance of difficulties. They leave places where life is hard because they need warmth, Nietzsche writes. They still love their neighbor and cling to him because they need warmth. This vivid description helps explain another paradox of leadership. We often support leaders who promise to protect us from life's hardships and complexities. This is especially dangerous when we try to distinguish between populist leaders who address real problems and corrupt ones who manipulate those problems. The FIFA corruption scandal serves as an excellent example. Many football fans were aware of the corruption among FIFA officials, yet they continued to support them because they provided what fans wanted: thrilling tournaments and national pride, without requiring complex changes in the economy or sports governance. Imagine two political speeches. One states, "The problems we face are complex and will require difficult choices and sacrifices from all of us." The other declares, "The problems are simple. I alone can solve them without any sacrifices on your part. Which one is more likely to win elections across different cultures and time periods? The answer is obvious. Political scientists studying voter behavior have found something interesting. During periods of economic or social stress, voters invariably gravitate toward leaders who offer simple solutions and scapegoats, rather than those who acknowledge the complexity of the situation. Even if they understand that simple solutions are unlikely to work, psychological comfort outweighs practical considerations. What comforts are you seeking in leadership? What complexities are you striving to avoid? By recognizing our own desire for simple answers, we begin to understand our vulnerability to those who may take advantage of it. The psychological models we have explored are not inevitable. Some societies have recognized these vulnerabilities and developed effective ways to counter corrupt leadership. Let us consider the post-apartheid Republic of South Africa under Nelson Mandela. Despite strong motives for revenge and exploitation after decades of oppression, it was precisely those conditions that typically fuel support for corrupt leadership that South Africa chose to follow a different path. Mandela's Truth and Reconciliation Commission directed discontent towards healing rather than retribution. By acknowledging the pain of the people while rejecting revenge as a solution, South Africa created a model capable of overcoming the psychology that usually allows corruption to thrive. Iceland's response to the financial crisis of 2008 is another example. When corrupt bankers and politicians put the economy at risk, citizens initiated a kitchen revolution, surrounding parliament with ordinary people wielding kitchen utensils. They achieved resignations, imprisoned banking executives, and rewrote the constitution with direct citizen involvement. Iceland succeeded by fostering collective efficacy, a shared belief that citizens together can change their circumstances. This serves as an antidote to the psychological helplessness that breeds support for corrupt strong leaders. On a personal level, resistance begins with self-awareness. Ask yourself, do I support a leader because they provide practical benefits, or because they satisfy deeper psychological needs related to identity or tribal affiliation? Women from the Jabara Polu district in Liberia offer another example. After a prolonged period of corrupt leadership that exploited tribal divisions, women from different ethnic groups formed intertribal councils that implemented new accountability systems. By building relationships across group boundaries, they neutralized the tribal psychology that corrupt leaders manipulated. These examples are united by a common thread. They do not deny the psychological forces that Nietzsche wrote about. Instead, they acknowledge these vulnerabilities and create structures that channel them in healthier directions. The quest for power transforms into democratic participation. The need for heroes shifts towards recognizing ordinary citizens performing acts of integrity. Have you noticed how your community either supports or resists these models? Our vulnerability to corrupt leadership is not a personal failure. It is deeply human. Our strength lies in creating communities that help us collectively overcome these tendencies. Nietzsche not only identified our psychological vulnerabilities, but also offered a path to overcome them. Become who you are. He urged us to grow authentically rather than succumb to the will of others. To do this, we must first understand the forces within us: our lust for power, our resentment, our fear of freedom, our herd instinct, our longing for idols, and our desires for comfort as the last man. These are not just abstract ideas. They are the very impulses that corrupt leaders exploit. Nietzsche challenges us to embrace amor fati, love of fate. Instead of seeking leaders who promise to save us from difficulties, he urges us to confront life's challenges directly and to create our own values, rather than borrowing them from those in power. But this path requires honesty. Why do we support the leaders we support? Is it due to rational judgment, or because they satisfy deeper emotional needs for power, simplicity, belonging, or even a sense of place? These are not simple questions. They threaten our self-perception as rational and independent beings. But Nietzsche believed that we can accept them and transform ourselves, not by denying our instincts, but by understanding and integrating them. This is how we evolve. Man is what he must overcome, he wrote.